Courtney, hi, great to see you. Come on in. Oh, thanks, Courtney. It's so nice to see you too. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, I mean, you know, with the whole lockdown thing, a little bit difficult to see everybody. Right. Well, let's get started. Where did I put those notes now? Just 1 second, sorry. Okay. Here we go. So today we're discussing Scaffold 5 and referencing. Am I correct? Yes, that is correct. So do you maybe want to start by discussing Scaffold 5 and just getting us all up to speed? So what you're basically going to do is you are going to build on Scaffold 4. Scaffold 5 is a summary, and you're going to be summarizing one side of the argument in the poster you did as a team. By that I mean that argument that you made a beautiful poster out of, you are going to choose one side of it. So are you for the topic or are you against it? And then you are going to summarize the points that help your argument. It's not very long. There's a wonderful template on ClickUp that you can use to put your data in. You will need one source to make use of, and you will have a reference list at the end, and you'll use in-text referencing. You have to have one quote within the summary. Essentially what you're doing is you are paraphrasing and summarizing. That is the skill here. And to paraphrase and summarize, it means to condense information to make it smaller. So paraphrasing is essentially taking a sentence and reworking it in your own words. It is not an excuse to use the thesaurus on your computer. It is instead an opportunity to put something into your own words. Very important skill. It's something you'll use for. So summarizing is basically taking a text and condensing it. You're just going to keep the main points. At the end of it, you will only have 1/3 of the information you initially had in the text itself, because you are getting rid of all the secondary information, you're getting rid of all the unnecessary quotes, examples, data, things like that, and you are just retaining the important information. And that's what you are doing here. You are getting rid of the other side completely. You're only choosing one stance, and you are taking the important information surrounding that stance from the poster that you did, and that's what you are going to do. But I have heard that if you have any queries at all, you can discuss them on the forum, and someone will answer your questions. So that's... Yes, no, of course. The forum is under Scaffold 5 on ClickUp, and it is there to help you. It's there if you have any questions or any queries. It's also nice because you may have a question that somebody else has already asked, and you can just scroll down and see how it's been responded to. And if you are a little bit bashful and you don't want to ask your question outright, then you're always welcome to email your lecturer and they'll help you out. Okay, so on to referencing. What is it? Why is it important? Let's get down to basics. What is referencing and why is it important? Well, referencing is acknowledging a source that you've made use of within a text. Either this is a text you're writing, or a text you're summarizing, or just a text you're interacting with, really. We reference for multiple reasons, 2 of which are plagiarism, to avoid it at all costs, which we know is a big goal in the academic field. And it's also to give credit to a source that you've made use of. It is to acknowledge their hard work that has influenced your writing and your concepts and your ideas that have come from that source. One of the things that it's a bit of a you scratch my back, I scratch your back situation is when you make use of credible sources and you reference them, your text gains a certain level of authenticity or credibility because you're making use of a source or a person or an author that has standing within the field. So it is very important to reference on multiple levels, to give credit where credit's due, to avoid plagiarism, but also to gain your own credibility and authenticity within your text. Because if you have a text that has no references, specifically in the academic field, it is a major red flag. So that's why. But how will I know what to reference and when to reference? Well, your lecturer will always assist you with guidelines and will help you figure out how you are supposed to be referencing and how many sources you're meant to be using. For example, in Scaffold 5, you only need one source. And really, if I'm being honest, from here on out, you will be referencing. It is a skill that is not just necessary and mandatory for the academic world, but it is a skill you will make use of in your studies regardless of the field you choose. So if you get it waxed, then everything gets much easier, and it really assists you in writing something and preparing your outlines and things like that. So I guess it's safe to say that it's pretty important then. Yeah, it's extremely important, very, very important. Now I've heard about in-text referencing. Referencing can kind of be seen from two different approaches, and by that I mean you have in-text referencing and then you have your reference list at the end. In-text referencing is when you quote or you make use of a concept, or you've read through a bunch of sources and you have derived your own idea, but it is influenced by another source. Then you will in-text reference. In high school and in the past, without in-text referencing, you would usually make use of different sources with quotes or ideas and then just put the source at the end in a bibliography or a reference list. Now, what we do is we give credit where it is made use of. So by that I mean, if you make use of a quote, you in-text reference by that quote. If you make use of a concept or an idea, you in-text reference by that concept or that idea. It's very important. It's like we said, the whole idea of giving credit to someone, and it's also gaining credibility within your text. From here on out, your in-text referencing will be marked, and if you have no in-text referencing, you will lose marks dramatically because you are not referencing correctly. So it's not something that you can do as an option, it's something you have. That's all good and well to explain, but how would it actually look on paper? If I'm in-text referencing, it's because I have made use of a source. So I've either quoted or I have used a concept or an idea that I've derived from another source. There are two ways to write this out. So the first way is if you have incorporated the source into your text. So for example, say I have an author and their surname is Smith. And I say something along the lines of, according to Smith, A, B, and C. How I will write that then is I will say Smith, and after his or her surname, I will have brackets, and within the brackets, I will have the date that the text was published. And I will have a colon, and then I will have the page number that I took the quote or concept or idea from. That's the one way of writing it. The second way is if I haven't incorporated the author into the text at all. So if I've just done a quote, or I have just used a concept or an idea and I'm not directly referring to the author, then what I'll do is I will have a bracket, and within the bracket I will have the author's surname, comma, the date, then by date I mean the date that the text was published, colon, the page number or page numbers. That will all sit in the bracket, and the bracket will sit after the quote or the concept or the idea. Yes, so that is how you would in-text reference something. It looks something like this. I see. So how would it look if I had, let's say, two authors? All right, if you had two authors, very similar idea. So what will happen is if you are directly making use of the authors in the text, as we did with Smith, then you will refer to both of the surnames. So let's say now we have Smith and the other surname is Dennis. How it will look is you will have Smith and then the words and Dennis, And then in brackets again, you will have the date the text was published, colon, the page numbers. And if you are not referring to the authors directly, then again you will have brackets, Smith, ampersand, which is that sign that looks like an and, Dennis, comma, the date the text was published, and then colon and the page numbers, all neatly in the brackets. Looks something like this. All right, let's say something a bit crazier. What happens if I had 10 authors? Then what would I do? 10 authors. Still very easy, don't stress. So if you have above 3 authors in a text, what you will then do when you're in-text referencing is a little bit different. You are going to still have the first surname of the author. If you're referring to them directly, then you will have, let's say again, Smith. And now instead of making use of all the other surnames, you are going to collapse them into the words et al. E-T-A-L, full stop. And et al is almost a blanket term or general term that covers the other authors. And you will then make use of the authors properly in your reference list. So their names aren't lost, but it's just to condense the text and condense the in-text reference, because it can become very wordy, especially if you do have 10 authors. So your direct reference will look like Smith, et al, full stop, brackets, date of the publication, colon, page number or page numbers. And then if you are referring to just the concept or quote without directly referring to the author, inside the brackets you will have Smith, et al, full stop, and a comma still, the date that the text was published, colon, the page numbers in brackets. It looks something like this. Okay, that makes sense. What would I do if I had no author? Then how would I do my referencing? No author. No date and no author are a little bit of red flags in the academic referencing world, and the reason for that is that you will very rarely find an academic peer-reviewed journal article that lacks an author. Where you may find missing authors is websites, newspaper articles, things like that. But for the most part, you should always find an author, whether it's a corporate author or a general author, authors, as we've been discussing. Let me just chat about a corporate author quickly. Sometimes you have a corporation or an organization and they publish something under their collective name. So let's say KFC wrote an academic journal article and they did not have one specific author. The word or the name or the organization KFC then becomes the author. So how we have been referencing previously with one single surname, that is how you will now make use of the corporate author. It's as if it's one surname. This is something that's quite common if you're making use of statistics, scientific findings, things along those lines, case studies. You will find corporate authors within the academic fields. So that is one way you can get around making use of the author issue. Another way is that you would then, if there truly is no author, you would put in the first phrase of the document, the title of the publication or journal article or newspaper article. Just like the first word or two, and then followed by an ellipses, the 3 dots. But that is honestly the last resort, and you should never ever have, specifically when looking for journal articles, a text that does not have an author to it. So rather find a more credible source if you are coming up with many sources that don't have authors. With no date, where you would usually have the date of the publication, you will instead put in the word or the abbreviation in full stop, D full stop to signify no date. But again, try to avoid no authors and no dates. Yes, that is how to get. How should the in-text reference be placed in the text? Should it be in the paragraph, or should it be at the end of the paragraph? Do I put it at the end of the entire essay? How does it work? So your in-text reference will be placed directly after your quotation or your concept or your idea. So before you even put your full stop in place with that concept or idea, the in-text reference needs to be there. It lives within the sentence that you are making use of from the text. So you will not put your in-text reference collectively just at the bottom of a paragraph when you've made use of that idea or concept at the top of the paragraph. Okay, so now that I have in-text referencing waxed, do you? What do you mean? Well, you have been asking a lot of questions, and I personally would rather re-explain everything to you and start from the beginning to make sure that you understand everything fully than you walk away from this not understanding things and feeling like you're overwhelmed or that something isn't adding up, because I know my team and myself, we would much rather explain something 10 times over to one person than leave that person with doubt or any questions or something like that. So you can always ask if you are feeling a little bit confused about something, if you have 1 or 2 questions. I mean, like 1 or 2 questions. You don't know. We'll chat after. We'll chat. Cool. So now that I have everything waxed, what do I do with all of my sources at the end of it? Oh, you mean your reference list or your bibliography? Yes, exactly. All right, well, let me first of all discuss the actual reference list or bibliography. So first of all, it's going to live on a completely separate page to your text that you've just written. It has its own page and it'll have a nice heading, reference list or bibliography. Then what you're going to do is you are going to make sure you make use of no bullets, no numbers, because at the University of Pretoria UAL department, we use the Harvard Referencing Guide. And if you're using bullets or numbers, you're not using that style or that guide, and you can lose marks because it means you're using a completely different style or guide. Everything is in alphabetical order. It's neat, it's in the same font as the previous text you've written as above, and you guys are only going to be referencing one source in your scaffold. So let's chat a bit about that. I think it's going to look a little bit different to your in-text referencing and different to what you've done previously. What do you mean? So when you're referencing a journal or a text at the end in your reference list, it's much longer because, like we said, it includes all the details. So how a journal article reference in a reference list would look is you would first of all include the surname. So let's say Smith again, comma, their first initial, full stop. Then you would have the date that the text was published, no longer in brackets, just as it is, full stop. After that, you will have the journal article's name. Not the journal's name, the journal article, the article that you're referred to. That'll be there in normal sentence case, no italics, nothing like that. After that, full stop, you will have the journal's name, and the journal will be in italics. After the journal's name, you will then have a comma, you will have the volume number, in brackets you will have the edition, you will have a colon, and then you will have the pages that you used of the entire article. It will be the entire journal article. And that is how you reference a hard copy journal article. If you are referencing an online journal article, you follow the exact same format, but when you get to the page numbers, you then have online accessed, colon, the hyperlink where you accessed it, and then the date that you accessed it, and obviously the date you then accessed it. And that is how you do a reference for a journal article. And it looks and with 2 authors? Alright, so if you have 2 authors or more authors, now we are giving credit to every single author we make use of. We're no longer using et al. Because this is our final reference list. So you are going to use the surname of the first author, comma, their initial, full stop. And then after that you will have another comma. And you will have the second author's surname, comma, initial, full stop. And you will keep going if you have 20 authors or 3 authors, and before you put the last author's name in, you will then use the ampersand, so to signify it's the final author. And then the rest of the format's exactly the same, so it'll look something like this. Something important I forgot to add. Please do not alphabetize the sources themselves. If you have a source and they have 10 authors and the first author begins with a Z, their surname, and the third author's surname begins with an A, please do not alphabetize the source itself. The reason for that is that surnames are organized very specifically. It could be due to workload that was put in, so the person who's published first did the most work. It could be due to a previous agreement. It could be due to the fact that the 2 of the other authors were actually supervisors. There is a multitude of reasons, but please do not alphabetize a source list within the source itself. When they ask you to alphabetize your reference list or bibliography, what they mean is they would like you to alphabetize according to the source as it is given to you. So if you have someone and their surname begins with a Z and the third author in that source begins with an A, that source is going to the end with the Z's. It's not going to be rearranged. All right, very important because you can confuse a lot of people and you are essentially changing how the source is recognized in its community if you do something like that. So that's how you reference then. Yes, that's how you reference. So as we've said, for your Scaffold 5, you only need 1 source, but for your argumentative essay and for many other assignments to come in your academic career, you will need to make use of referencing on a bigger scale. So that's why we're here, to help you and to chat it through and help you understand the process and the structure of referencing. So, is there anything else you'd like to add in just before we wrap things up this side? Yes, thank you. Just before we wrap up, I'd just like to add that it's very important to remain organized when you are referencing. Keep your sources close by, write them down if you need to, just make sure you have them. If you're working with online sources, make sure you keep your tabs open so you don't lose them. It's also just very important to not overuse sources. You should have between either 1 to 3 or 3 to 5 in-text references per paragraph. It depends on your lecturer, it depends on the size of your paragraph, and it also depends on your guidelines. But that's a good rule of thumb. And it's also very important to not include too many authors because then you are warbling on a little bit and you're detracting from what you're trying to say in your text, which we don't want. Sources are there to help you. They are not there to write the essay for you. The best way to do it is if I had to remove all of my quotes and sources, does my content still make sense? And that's the best way to make sure you're not overusing your sources. Yes, that's all I have to say, and good luck. Well, Courtney, as usual, it's been such a delight having you in my office. I really enjoy our one-on-ones. I feel such a friendship with you, a kinship. Courtney, honestly, you're too kind. I also feel this connection between us. It's almost like I feel like we're the same person or something, I don't know. But I just think you're fantastic. Like, keep doing what you're doing, like, you're great. And to you, hello. I hope this answered some of your referencing questions. If you have any other questions about referencing or honestly just anything, please feel free to ask. You can ask on the forum, you can speak to your lecturers through their emails. We're all here to help you during this very strange time we're all going through at the moment. I think the most important thing to remember is that we all have to go a little bit slow and a little bit more calculated at the moment. But our priority is still you and making sure that you understand what's going on and making sure that you feel comfortable with everything. I know that everything is very overwhelming at the moment. There are many unanswered questions on many different levels, but please make use of the tools at your disposal. We want to help you in any way we can, honestly. If you feel that you need to ask the same question 10 times, ask it 10 times. We would rather explain it 10 times than have you walk away feeling like you don't really get it or that there's still one part of it that's a little bit sketchy to you. Really, our priority here is just to make sure that you gain these awesome new skills and to make sure that you feel comfortable in what we're doing next. So if you have questions, if you have queries, if you're panicking about something, please chat to us so that we can help you and make sure that you feel comfortable and that you feel like you know what's happening with every step of the way. So happy referencing. See you on the forums and chat if you have any queries or questions. All right, bye. Happy referencing.